So I wanted today's lesson to kind of bridge that gap between what happened when we had slavery in our country and then what happened after the Civil War ended before we dive into the civil rights movement in the next few weeks. And earlier this year, we talked about the Bill of Rights, which is in the Constitution, the First Amendment, the first 10 amendments, which protect our civil rights like the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion, freedom of press, having a trial. So now the free African Americans have these civil rights. But as you can imagine, it wasn't an easy transition, and the country was literally torn apart, torn in half because of this war. So for about 10 years or a little more after the Civil War, America needed to rebuild. And this period of time is called, I know one group knows what this is called. What is the time period called when the Civil War ended and America needed to rebuild?
Reconstruction era.
Good, the Reconstruction era, exactly. Could someone read this definition for me?
Period from 1865 to 1876, when the federal government worked to expand and protect civil rights for African Americans during the United Nation after the Civil War.
Excellent, yes. So there's kind of two big things that happened. The civil rights of African Americans were expanded and protected, but then at the same time, also the North and South had to reunite. They were enemies for several years, so they had to come back together and reunite in one nation. For the next few lessons, we're going to use this supporting question to guide our study of the civil rights and how they kind of evolved for the African American people at this time. How were their rights extended, protected, or challenged? And what words in this question do you think are going to be really important for us to explore? There's a few. Extended. And what does that mean, extended?
Like how they've got more rights.
Right, getting more. Exactly. Extended means getting more, expanding, growing. And another key word here? Matt?
Challenge.
Challenge. Right. What does that mean? If their rights are challenged, what does that mean?
They had a harder life after the Civil War because then they had to fight for themselves after making no money during the Civil War and during the Civil War during slavery because they weren't paid at all.
And then I think there's one more word that's important. What does protect mean?
Like save, like defend.
Save or defend, exactly. We're going to be exploring how the rights of these people were extended, which we said means grow or getting more, protected, save, like Hayden said, or challenge, like Matt said. Sometimes they might have been taken away. We are going to create smaller questions to help us answer this big question and try to create at least two small questions that are going to help us answer this big question. The first few times I did it, I didn't realize how important it was, those first two steps of highlighting the question word. So they really understood we were focusing on the how, that was important. And then understanding the key words was important as well, because I think that sets them up to really understand what we're looking for. In the last lesson we had, the students learned about the Gettysburg Address. In the activator today, I wanted to just refresh their memories about what we had just learned about with the Civil War and its ending, make them understand how it ended when the Confederates surrendered so that they could have a better understanding of exactly what made this war come to an end.
In the 60s, 50s, they weren't allowed to have some jobs that white people could have. Did they have access to?
What challenges did they face? What other little questions could we ask?
Did they extended their rights more in northern states, or were they saving?
That's a really good question. You were on a roll over here. Did they get? I was so pleasantly surprised with the questions they came up with thinking about this topic, and it's such a dramatic change from the beginning of the year when they really didn't understand how to kind of explore their own curiosities and delve deeper into a topic. Would someone like to start sharing a question?
What would happen if you were mixed race? Would you have the same rights as a white person or a black person?
Another really good question.
Would a black person have the same job as a white person but pay less?
Matt?
How were the Southern white people treating the black people after their loss in the war?
That's a thoughtful question. Hayden?
What were some of the challenges they faced?
Zach?
What did the South economy do after the war?
What happened to the South's economy? We're going to talk about that as well. Peter?
How long was the time period between the Civil War and segregation?
Excellent. Oh, these are such good questions. I think we're going to answer all of them between now and the end of the school year with the social studies lessons we have to come. And I'm really impressed with how deeply you were all thinking. Today, we're going to be actually looking at different stations. We're going to visit 6 stations that all revolve around certain things that happened to help extend, protect, or unfortunately sometimes challenge the rights of African Americans at this time. I'm going to give you this worksheet right now where you're going to see the title of each of the 6 stations. And as you go to each station, we're going to focus right now specifically on how their rights were extended or protected.
They can also like choose what they want to do. Like they can vote, they can marry.
They lived their whole life working really hard and not getting any money for it. So they didn't have any money. But like, how did they get the land?
It possibly could have been from abolitionist donations or freed people of color who already lived in the North and maybe had land, or from the government.
I think this helped because it helped have Black people's voices heard throughout the country, because the congressmen could speak out against slavery and say how bad that experience was for them, and like same for civil rights and things.
I think after a whole year of having deep conversations about hard history, about talking about racism and slavery, they have gotten to a point where they feel more comfortable having these discussions even without me on their own, because we've built norms and routines about kind of how to talk about these things appropriately and creating an environment where students feel comfortable sharing their thoughts on these topics and ideas.
They were not allowed to work for anyone, doesn't matter who it is, without pay. So they had to be paid if they were doing work.
Excellent. Yes, that's important to add too.
7 Black men served in the 41st and 42nd Congress of the United States. All the men were Republicans. Except for Senator Hiram Revels, all the Black men elected to the 41st and 42nd Congress were born into slavery.
It helped because it gave Black people the right to elect Black congressmen, so they could share their perspective.
The right was extended because it gave the African American men the right to vote, because after the 15th Amendment was passed, because it said that no matter race, color, or previous enslavement could vote. It didn't give African American women the right to vote until 1919.
It is hard sometimes to determine if those rights were being extended or protected. And so I was listening to see if students were understanding the difference between the two. I was stepping in when I noticed some confusion between if a right was being expanded or protected from the students. The 13th Amendment, did your group determine if the 13th Amendment expanded rights for African Americans or protected? What did you say?
They were property, and then they weren't property because it literally made them real. They were already people, but it
Under the law,
they were seen as real people.
Because of the 13th Amendment, they're now protected under the Constitution. I would say it's kind of extended and protected for that one. I would say you could write down either. So what about the 15th Amendment? Did we say this one extended new rights for African Americans or protected?
It challenged the African American women, but also all women, to vote, because they couldn't vote until 1919 when the 19th Amendment got passed for everyone to vote.
Excellent, I agree. So extended a new right for African American, but men only. Right, Peter. Excellent. What about the station you read about, the Black congressmen? Did this extend rights or protect rights?
I said extended the rights because the Black people had the same rights as the white people, and because of this, the nation knows more about what the Black community wanted.
Excellent, yes. And now they had representatives at last. Wonderfully said, Maho. And the Freedmen's Bureau, what did you say for this one?
It gave them a home and a way to support themselves.
Excellent, yes. A lot of you were asking what happened to a lot of these African Americans after the war ended. Peter was asking, did they get paid? Were they homeless? Where did they live? So this is one way they kind of settled after the war, is from the Freedmen's Bureau, the help from the Freedmen's Bureau. Last military reconstruction, did that extend or protect the rights of African Americans? What did we say there?
They didn't want them to hurt the rights of the Black African Americans.
Exactly, after the war. Wonderful. Emery?
They didn't let women vote like black women, especially because they said like their reason was they were too delicate and like weak, but they weren't too delicate and weak to work in like the hot sun and for like hours and hours a day without any pay.
It seems kind of insane that they said that. I agree. And we're going to learn about the women's suffrage movement as well. Wonderful work. We're going to continue talking about Reconstruction and African American civil rights on Friday. So now I want you to save these though, because we're going to revisit these charts. The students who are just so interested in history do want to kind of have an answer, and they're eager to, Google something or ask me, wanting to know right away. But I think they've gotten to a point now where they know we're going to cover it. And I tried to remind them when we were doing that. I said at the end, we're going to answer these questions over the next few weeks. The ones we don't answer today will be answered soon. So hopefully they can be at ease knowing we will answer them eventually.